Welcome, everyone, to Talent Experience Live. I know we are a few minutes late here, but we like to be fashionably late around these parts. We like to make sure that our hair is done and everything is good. So thank you for bearing with us. As you all know, Talent Experience Live is the show that covers everything that you need to know in talent acquisition, recruiting, employee experience, and human resources as a whole. I am your host, Devin Foster, and this program is proudly brought to you by the good folks here at Phenom, whose purpose is to help 1 billion people find the right job, the right work, however you want to end that phrase, but is the reason why we put on programs like this. We put out content on our blogs and why we attend so many events that we always attend. So thank you all for joining, but you may be asking, content, blogs, live streams, why would they do that? How does that help 1 billion people find the right job? And the answer is quite simple. We do it through our intelligent talent experience platform, which helps candidates find the right roles faster. Recruiters see next level productivity, employees evolve in their current roles and beyond, as well as managers get to build better teams through data analytics and automation. And of course, it is the year of 2023. You cannot mention automation without, of course, talking about AI. And everything is powered by super slick artificial intelligence. So if any of that interests you at all, don't walk to phenom.com right now. You can check out our AI Day recap, which was a couple weeks ago. Check out the events that we are currently attending. You can request a demo if you so please, or just check out the blog and read up on some of the exciting topics. One exciting topic that we are covering today is what's your worth it. I know that sounds a little open-ended, but today we're going to talk about really unveiling the transformation in the employee experience. I am joined by a very special guest, Becki Feldmann, who is Senior Employee Experience Designer. We are going to talk a little bit about ourselves, what our worth it is, as well as some hot button issues across HR and specifically in the employee experience today. So without any further hesitation, let's bring Becki onto the program. Becki, how are you? You're still muted.
We practiced this. I am good. Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you. It has been one of those things that I don't think anyone's used to. I was at HR Tech last week, and there was a vendor saying, not selling, but giving away shirts that said "You're on mute." It's a tricky thing. I understand we practice it, but it's okay. We will make it through it. I'm doing well. It's been a while. We've had you on. You're now a recurring guest to the program, and you've been busy. You have authored a chapter in a new book. Tell us a little bit about it. Here, I got it.
And the collection is called Deconstructing Grit, and it was compiled by Jennifer Bardot, who is CEO of Own Your Grit. And grit stands for growth, resilience, intention, and tenacity. And so I was a part of the Intention Anthology. If you are looking this up right now, Tenacity has not been released yet, and I think November 1st is when that one will be released. But I was asked to participate in book number 3, along with 39 other women who really have taken the time to share inspiring stories, life stories of how they've listened to their own internal compass, really focusing on positive habits and leading life with purpose. And one of the first things that we were asked to do when we signed up for the chapter was really think about, what does intention mean to us? And there's a lot of definitions of intention. And the one that I like best, that speaks to me most, is purpose. Purpose gives us meaning, it gives us clarity, it gives us direction. And in my chapter, which is titled Stop Wishing, Start Doing, I share how I never really had a clear path. However, I always had purpose driving me there, wherever there was. My career, if you look me up on LinkedIn, you'll see that I've been kind of all over the place with just 2 organizations, but lots of different roles. And also involved with several community organizations. And I'm always asked, how does this all fit together? Like, why are you doing all of this? It's all really aligned with my values. And my values are actually written up on a Post-it note here in my home office. But it's the way that I evaluate all decisions. My values are faith, community, relationships, family, and health. And if I had to bottle all of that up, it would be making a difference. But I didn't always operate this way. I had a boss back in my 20s who told me that I burn the wick at both ends. And some people might still think I do that, but I am more intentional of how I fill my life now and what I say yes to. So in my chapter, you'll also see that, I've had some pretty significant life experience, as many of us have, that really helped me kind of refocus and reshape my priorities in order to live the life that's intended for me. And my dad passed away when I was in high school. So I was young, I was a teen, trying to figure out what the heck am I going to do. And a friend's mom gave me a quote, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and that was, "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." And looking back, I think I've done that. And then I'm going to leave you with another quote. You'll read my chapter and know that I love quotes, and I'll probably say a bunch more throughout our time today. But one of my favorite human beings on the planet, one of my former leaders and mentors, retired a few years ago. And he gave me a bookmark with this quote. And it says, "Do not ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and go do that." And that is by Reverend Howard Thurman. And I know when I first read that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's super selfish. But when you really read into it, it's not. It's about intentionally living into your gifts to serve the world in the best way possible. When you do something that you love, you end up having more to give. And we'll talk about that in a little bit when we kind of talk about changing team member expectations and experiences.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
no,
I
I
love
love
that.
that.
The one thing that I wanted to mention is you said your purpose is on a Post-it note. Um, I I want to know, why don't you have it framed? Why isn't it someplace, up on the wall? The Etsy shop or something. I love the accessibility of it, where you can take it on the go. You can use it as an impromptu bookmark or something like that. But before I jump into my next question, I wanted to ask you: is there any reason behind the Post-it note?
I believe in writing, in putting things down, but I will tell you, and I don't know if you guys can see my water bottle, I do have my purpose and messaging in different places. And this says, "May we leave all things better than we found them." So if I had to bottle up the things that are on the Post-it note over there, it's making a difference. It's making an impact. And then it's also on these posters behind me. So it's woven into everything that I do. And usually I'm wearing jewelry that says something like that too, because I'm always reminding myself of this is who I am. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing, so that I make sure that I'm carrying my light.
No, I totally get it. And I love that it is everywhere. I do a similar thing. I have tattoos now, which are my reminder for me. A few that signify my daughter and stuff like that. And whether I'm running or whatever it may be, it's just a friendly reminder. And to your point of writing things down, it brings me back to my days of studying in college and in high school, where I was, sitting next to folks with laptops and things like that, taking down notes. I was always a pen and paper person. I still am to this day. If I'm on a call, that's how I can remember things, and I'm able to pick up on things that folks are saying, that I may not write down, because that's my focus. We have so many distractions going on in the world constantly. So that is my little thing. But back to the book, you mentioned 39 women took part in this book, and each had very different stories to tell. I want to ask, what was the collaboration process like for that? I think back to collaborating, in college on writing assignments and things like that. It wasn't the best experience. I'm a far better collaborator now in a professional setting. So, how was that? And then also, what did you learn from the other wonderful women who are a part of this book that you've applied to your life now?
Yeah. So Jen has a pretty kind of nailed down process of how this works. When she identifies and works with the authors, we all come together to talk first. So it's not like here's your here's your chapter and here's what it's going to be about. You actually will meet and talk with the other women. And share your stories, because I think a lot of the times we have these stories in us, but we have never said it out loud. And so by having that community and that was kind of pre-work actually to meet the other women and start to talk about it, that helped shape what was going to then come out on paper. And so I would say what I learned from the other authors is that we all have a story. I love stories. You'll see storytelling is something that's really, really important to me. And I don't mean storytelling as making up stories. I mean sharing our life stories. So I learned from the other authors, we all have a story and we all have a purpose. And unlike what many have been told, purpose isn't necessarily a thing that you find. It's not something that you just wake up one day and you're like, I know it, this is it. Some people call that the Mark Twain moment, but that's actually pretty rare. And there's a lot of research and books around that I can share. But purpose is something that you build, something that you create, something that you tap into. It's also not necessarily a single thing, and purpose can change over time. And so these stories that I heard from these women were really around following their internal compass and navigating change. And sometimes I think when we share these stories, it gives others the courage to share theirs and also to make changes that they need to make in their lives. I also think that stories lead to deeper connection. I'm trying to remember who said this. I think it was Patty Dye. She said, the shortest distance between two people is a story. And I really do believe that's true, whether you're at a networking event or whether you're team building, whatever it may be. I just think we need a whole lot more of that in our increasingly disconnected world.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think of, back to COVID and any situation that you may be going through. Oftentimes we look at our coworkers, our friends, our family, and think, oh, they're going through the same thing. Like they're overcoming it, right? COVID's the perfect example where we were all kind of sent back home. We had to do our lives, and it was a challenge for a lot of folks. Whether they may have had elderly folks who lived in the house with them, whether they had children to take care of, whether they had health concerns or they fell ill. All of these things were happening, and to your point, you don't know that unless you share, unless you talk. And there was a huge shift on focusing on mental health, I think, during that time frame, and getting outside and enjoying the environment, stepping away from your computer. I was the worst proponent of this. I would wake up, at 8:45, log in at 9, make sure I kind of looked presentable with my sweatpants on, and then stay on for the rest of the day. And I thought, well, everyone else is doing it, but we were, balancing a child at home. There was, two of us working, and we live in the city. So it was a 2-bedroom apartment. One of us is in the living room. The other person has a meeting. It's back and forth. And the only way that you can seek help for those sort of things is to share your story and ask if there may be somebody else who's in a similar situation and have those adjustments made. But the reason I mentioned COVID is I want to ask you, what do you think has been the biggest shift, from that time frame when it comes to the employee experience as a whole?
Yeah, and I think you've hit on it there, is that we all have something going on. So I think the biggest shift is how team members are really reevaluating life and work. And I want you to hear this clearly, because when I say that, I'm very clear of how I say that. We're reevaluating life and work, and I don't mean life versus work, but really more of how are they best integrated to satisfy the whole human? Because when you talk about work-life balance, and I know that's been a word that's been out there forever, it puts the human in the middle, and it creates a bit of a conflict, just that you described, Devin, with the kid and your wife, and trying to that actually can't be balanced. It just has to be integrated. You got to work through it, and you guys will figure it out. But it's not a balance, and it's an integration. So think of it more as a blend, and really, how do team members lean into all of the aspects that make them whole? including their occupation. So it's more than work. And I think we have some generational conflict here that's popping up because this isn't necessarily how all of us grew up. Our newest generations in the workforce want to work to live and not live to work. So when you first started, you said, what is your worth it? And a lot of people are thinking, well, what the heck does that mean when it comes to employee experience? So I wanted to explain that just a little bit because I think this is the shift that has happened. Our experience during COVID led many of us to have, some pretty significant questions that we're asking ourselves around how we spend our time, and are we spending our time in meaningful ways? So maybe the question sounded something like, am I focusing on the things that are most important to me? Am I living an authentic life, or am I just doing what people expect of me? And am I doing meaningful work? I think questions like this are what contributed to the great resignation and the great reshuffle and the great whatever. I mean, there were so many words that were made up. And some say COVID caused it. I think COVID just accelerated it. I think it's been brewing for a while. So even if you didn't change jobs, maybe your focus or priorities changed because you started to evaluate your worth it. And so when you think about your worth it, this is a question actually that came to me when I was listening to a panel talk about what love has to do with it when it comes to best places to work. And it really came down to what's worth it. And everyone's worth it is different. And it's critical that we listen and we learn to what team members want and need, what makes something worth it for them, because they're willing to make changes because of it. We're seeing it in how offers are negotiated. Our newer generations are wanting more time off versus pay. They're wanting meaningful work. They want to make decisions on where they work. And I'm sure you can think of a million more examples of what worth it looks like. But the team member experience matters more now than ever. And organizations that recognize this and take care of their team members, it's going to lead to greater retention. It's going to lead to greater customer scores, satisfaction scores, and also improved talent attraction efforts because the story that people are hearing is that it's worth it. And again, that can look different to anybody. So I wanted to share a little bit of my worth it. My list is long, and that's because I know what I want. And I'm not going to settle for anything less. So it's really around, working at a place where my ideas are considered, and oftentimes people can add to and improve it. What's worth it to me is a place where people actually live out their culture and are held accountable to behaviors. A place where team members can build relationships, like actual, genuine human relationships, both internally and externally. And then lastly, and in no particular order, it's where my well-being and my family is a priority. That's huge to me. I didn't always work in an organization where family was valued and that, I felt that I couldn't take time off work. I even had a boss at one time when my kids were really young, and they're older now, but she said, can't you take him to a sick daycare? And I'm like, I don't think that exists. But I was a young professional and being told things like that, and that's not okay to me. I would get my work done even though my child was sick, so I did it. But a sick daycare wasn't an option for us. So Devin, I know you made some transitions during COVID, so would love to hear your experience.
Yeah, my life was flipped upside down a little bit, as I think many of ours were. But I had my first child in August of 2021, so not at the beginning of COVID, but we were locked in. I couldn't go to doctor's visits. I couldn't do numerous things. But then my little bundle of joy came into our life, and it puts things into perspective. Where you think of when you go to work, it may not be just for a paycheck, or it may not just be for the happy hour or whatever it may be. It is to provide the best life that you can for your and a little bit of a freak out, I think, as most parents do the first time, where they hand you your child, you leave the hospital, and now it's like, oh, I have to look after a human being now. I am responsible for this. And I evaluated work, and obviously stress is at an all-time high and things like that. And unfortunately, however you want to call it, I decided it was time to change jobs. So I went away, and I thought to myself, I found a role where I can work remote all the time. That way I am able for daycare. And since there is no sick daycare, as you put out, if my daughter was sick, I could stay home, or she could, be there with me, and we could aid her to good health. But what I found was the work from home wasn't for me. I could do it when we were all forced to work from home. However, I need that human interaction, that integration that you kind of talked about between work-life balance. I love the company culture that I am a part of at Phenom, and I boomeranged back and I said, I miss, I still stayed in touch with everyone, but I missed going to work with them, where I could hop on a Zoom call if we were working from home on that Monday or Friday or wherever it was, and I could talk about something that was off topic, and everyone would kind of understand. So I say all that because I found my worth it in my daughter, and at first I interpreted it the wrong way. And I think a lot of people may do that, where they have that moment of, I have to figure everything out for the next 30 years and plan it out. But to your point, so many individual stories are so different that you have to find out what works for you. And I think, as you mentioned, organizations have to do that as well, where there is no one size fits all, as there may used to have been years and years ago. I had Amit Parmar, the CEO of Clickify, on TXL last week, and we talked about the shift from the company long employee, that person that works for 20 to 30 years in the same sort of role and kind of works their way up. And to your point, Becki, I think you're a perfect example. That individual may not have changed, but the roles may have changed. The requirements for their particular position may have changed, and what they're looking for. You could have somebody who comes into an organization who, wants to be a salesperson, and then they lose that's a tough job. They lose that fire of that, and they say, I want to now be in customer success or something along those lines. So that's my worth it. It looks like you had some thoughts there. We put you on mute for a second, so I'm gonna unmute you and bring you back on.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that, that is, when you think about how can you retain, team members in this environment where, it's growing and changing and shifting. We don't necessarily have the 30-year team members anymore in some organizations, but some we do. And the ones that are able to retain talent over the long term really embrace that talent mobility and really listening to what team members want and need. So again, it goes back to listening. So when I think about the 16 years that I spent at my previous organization and the roles that I had, I've said before to people, a lot of those roles didn't exist until I got there. And that is such a cool experience to have. And that's because I didn't know it at the time, but I was job crafting, which is a term that you can look up in Google to see how it works. But job crafting is such an awesome way to re-engage with your work, to live into your purpose within your current role if you can, or grow it to something else, to deliver value to the organization and to fulfill who you are as a person. So it's a win-win for both the team member and for the organization.
I love that term, job crafting. I'm doing it right now, Becki. I came back. I was in a product marketing managing role previously. That's no secret. It's on my LinkedIn, and I thought that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Progress through that, and when I shifted, organizations, it was more of a traditional product marketing role where it's messaging. Kudos to you. You are a fantastic writer. I cannot stand writing, Becki. ChatGPT has been a lifesaver for me for correcting all of my typos and everything along those lines. But I enjoy conversations, and that's how I fell into this with Talent Experience Live. And I've crafted a new role. And I think you're absolutely right. With that, it allows folks to buy into an organization because they are now invested. And when you, quite frankly, create your own role, it's tough to find that role elsewhere, right? From an employee retention perspective, if you're creating a brand new, employee experience position or a social creator or whatever that is, it's probably not going to be on job boards. So organizations aren't going to be, hopping into folks' direct messages on LinkedIn or anything like that. And then if you're creating it, you have this sense of passion where you want to push it further and further and further. So I completely agree. Any thoughts on what I said there before we hop into the next, maybe controversial topic?
Yeah. So what I think I would say is, I think where the real magic happens is having that connection with your leader. Our leaders aren't mind readers, and so I think team members really need to take this. I mean, we think about development plan. It's not the leader's responsibility. That there's an individual role in that, and you work together to figure out what is it that makes you come alive, and how can we bring that into your current work. And sometimes we can't, sometimes it's something that's sitting on the leader's plate that they don't enjoy doing. But that team member says, oh my gosh, I love data. Give it to me. I'm like, go for it. So thinking about leaders delegating to light the fire in their team member and not just moving junk off your desk to somebody else, but I mean stuff that they really enjoy. But that takes conversation and relationship building to really understand what your team member needs to engage with the organization. And I think that that's a skill that leaders are lacking. I think that the idea of a leader has been steadily evolving over the last several decades. And so some of these skills like empathy and servant leadership and transparency, they all seem like soft words and soft skills. But one of the terms that I like to use instead of soft skills is relational skills. And when our leaders build this connection with their direct reports, I think that's when they're able to help unlock potential in our team members, and really to help them feel seen, heard, and valued, and on an ongoing basis. Like, it's not once a year during appreciation week, or maybe there's a one appreciation day a year, or maybe you only ask for feedback on the annual survey. Like, there needs to be an ongoing relationship, an ongoing listening strategy that again is ongoing, and the best place for that conversation to happen is between the team member and their leader. It's not talent management.
No, you're absolutely right, and it's challenging because every individual is going to be different, right? And how they communicate. Some folks, it may be via Slack message, Teams message, whatever that may be. Others, it can be an impromptu Zoom call. Some, it may be casually in the office, sitting next to one another. Where I know for me, the best conversations that I've had with my boss are 5:30 on a Friday, just as I'm walking around my neighborhood and having a conversation. That way, for me, work is done. I don't have to worry that I'm taking the leader away from what they have to do. But I may be taking them away from their family, so that's selfish of me. But typically it's okay. And having those conversations and understanding what is needed and where you can help and what you enjoy doing. But I bring up all of those examples, Becki, because there's a big hot button issue right now in employee experience as a whole, in, quite frankly, organizations and work culture as a whole. And it's return to the office. And a lot of folks don't want to talk about it because they've hired remote employees, or some people say, hey, I did my job even better when I was working from home. And I was out on a run this morning and I thought about that topic a lot. And I have, I think, a pretty good comparison of it. But I want to give you the opportunity first of what are you hearing as far as challenges when it comes to return to the office, and maybe what are some organizations doing to rectify that, or what could they do to potentially rectify that?
Yeah, I think this is a conversation in a lot of households now. I have lots of conversations with my husband about this, with friends, and so there's a lot buzzing around this. And I think the greatest challenge that I see across industries, and just by my research and chatting with friends, is that there is a real disconnect between decision makers and team members, and then the messaging that follows from that, or lack of communication that follows from that. And I read an article recently that had the coolest thought, and that is that the conversation about return to office should not have to be a battle to win. It really should be going back to listening. Let's talk to our team members. Let's identify business needs. So we're not saying let's just do what they want. We're talking about listen to business needs, what's working, what's not working, and let's make decisions that are based on the work group. Let's communicate it in such a way that it doesn't feel like a directive or a punishment, but rather an invitation to connect and to collaborate and to innovate in some of those awesome things that you missed, Devin, about the office, the in-person office. And a friend recently gave me advice for dealing with my teenager, and I thought it was really funny as I thought about her response, because I think it relates to leaders too. So when my son asks me to do things, sometimes it's just not the best way that he's asking me. And so she told me to use the phrase, ask me again to make me want to do it. And I thought that was pretty funny as we think about return to office. So instead of just putting out a blanket communication that we're going back 3 days a week or we're going back 5 days a week, consider how you're communicating the value of the in-person interactions. And treat people like adults. Have those hard conversations if performance is suffering. Let's address behaviors that aren't productive. Let's be transparent with our decisions, and let's bring our team members in to be a part of the conversation if we can. Those are most closely involved with the work. And I also want to empathize, I want our leaders, our decision makers to empathize with what team members are potentially losing, because I think that's where the battle comes in. So an example that I have is, picking my kids up from school. I didn't get to do that for, the first 6-7 years, and they were in daycare since, they were 6 months old, but I didn't get to do that. And now they're in 6th and 8th grade. And when I can pick them up from school now, I love it because I get to have conversations with my kids. And before I would pick them up at aftercare, and a lot of kids aren't going to aftercare anymore, but they would be done. I couldn't even have a conversation with them because they were done for the day and they were shut down. So I don't want to lose that. I missed out on that opportunity. And so I want leaders to understand that too. And then the other piece that I want to mention, because I think this might be where your head is going, Devin, is around the in-office experience needs to change. We can't expect team members to return to the office only to do what they were doing at home, and spend their day in front of a desk on Zoom meetings or Teams, whatever you're using. I really get why team members are saying, why am I here? I spent my commute here and I didn't get to run this morning, or, I don't get to pick up my kids. So there's so much in play there. And it ties back to the idea of intention. Organizations that are being intentional and really thinking about, you've probably heard the term moments that matter, and using that to direct when work should be done in person to get those awesome benefits of in-office experience. I just feel like sometimes team members go into the office only to be let down by the experience. And I'm not saying that the leader has to go jump through all these crazy hoops and have crazy perks offered to get them back to the office. But it's about getting team members from behind their desks, getting them out and about and doing something different to really make it something that they want to return to, instead of doing something that they could do at home and were doing quite well. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And I agree with you 100%. The example that popped into my head today, and it may be a bit of a stretch, but I have season tickets to the New York Jets, and I have arguments with fans regularly on the in-game experience is better at home because you don't have to, pay $12 for drinks. You don't have to sit in traffic, all of those things. And I always challenge them with, I live in Philadelphia, so I don't get to commiserate when my team is bad and celebrate when my team is win with anyone else in the same boat. But when I travel up to East Rutherford, New Jersey, and I spend that time before the game where I'm chatting about what happens if we do win this week, or those sort of things, and celebrating or commiserating after a loss. Sure, I could be home, and from that time of 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., I could get laundry done. I could prepare for next week, pick out, clothes, whatever the case may be. Things have changed since I've become a parent, where I do have to do a little bit more of that when I get home now. But I liken that to the office environment and celebrating when there is a big win with the company. That time maybe in between meetings where you catch up with folks on what they did this weekend. To your point, having those kind of impromptu conversations where you get to know folks and integrate that work-life balance a bit more, where you can find out that maybe there is a parent in your office who really wants to be there for pickup or really wants to attend the Halloween parade, but it's during a huge meeting. Those conversations are tough to have. They're easier to have when you're talking about, oh, what is your Halloween costume going to be, this year, or so on and so forth. So I know it's a bit of a stretch where we talk about, that NFL games or that in-stadium experience, but the one thing is when things go wrong, I think oftentimes that can be a very lonely place. It was a lonely place for me where I didn't get that initial feedback on why my work may not have been up to par. And then I had to wait an hour or 2 hours to get on, somebody's Zoom call. Whereas if you're in the office, you can pop by their desk and say, hey, when do you have a minute? Right. And say, I really want to talk to you about this. It's a lot of things I think get lost in context from that. So yes, it may not be worth it or for everyone. Some people will always want to get their work done on the couch, but those big moments where you're celebrating, those are the worth it moments from, I think, a work perspective, where as an organization, you want to make people want to be there, right? To your point, ask me so that I want to do it this way. It's creating that environment. And no, it's not with 80,000 people and, fireworks and the whole nine. It could be something as simple as, hey, we saw that email that came back, on how well your net promoter score is, or something along those lines. Congratulations. Like, share with the team on what went wrong, or if it's a difficult conversation that you're having from a customer perspective, a customer success perspective, how did you navigate through that? I'm having the same challenge with XYZ client. Talk me through how you got there. Those are the little things that I think you have to showcase. And it's not pizza parties, right? It's not happy hours or anything along those lines. But I know it's a bit out there, Becki. I want to get your thoughts on what you think of that.
Yeah, I think what you bring up though, it's about personal preference, and it's trying to figure out what's the experience that you're looking for. So there's, and I think what's similar to what you shared is another kind of scenario that I'll share. When someone plans a vacation, I think that sometimes they don't step back to think about what is the experience that I want to have. They and share that with others. They've dreamed up this in their head that I want to go to Mexico and we're going to bring, 25 different groups and it's going to be wonderful and it's going to be magical. Well, it's not. I think it's really being, again, intentional about really thinking about what is the experience that I want to have. And if the experience that I want to have is that I want us to collaborate as one group, then I need to schedule. I need to schedule that, and I need to schedule that in the office. So going back to the vacation example, if I want everybody to be together, then maybe we need to stay in one house, something like that, instead of going off in separate ways in separate offices. So just kind of think of it from that perspective. But lots of different analogies here, but it's really, really about intention and understanding, and then communicating the why behind that and what you expect to get out of it, and then also evaluating when you don't get what you want from it, and trying to figure out, well, why did that happen? Well, it's because we didn't put any intention around bringing people together. We left it to chance, and I'm probably repeating what I said on my podcast years ago, because this book is so important to me and I've recommended it to a million people, but it's called The Power of Moments, and it's by Chip and Dan Heath. And there's a whole lot of lessons in it, no matter what industry you're in, but it's about creating and identifying those moments of impact instead of leaving them to chance. Like, you get to create this. It's kind of like, creating your purpose. You get to create whatever it is that you want. You have to be intentional about thinking about what that is. It's not just going to magically happen.
You're absolutely right. That moments are huge. We have that book all over our office. I know for our onboarding pre-COVID, and we've brought it back since then. We create a moment when it's someone's first day, right? They don't just show up to a desk, and we have, I think it's "Welcome to the Jungle" plays as loud as we can. Anyone who's in the office comes around and says that, and I know we make it a point that whether you're a remote worker or not or somebody who's local, is to bring you on site for that, so that you experience that culture firsthand, because also you want it to be the same for everyone, right? No matter if they go back to their own kind of neighborhood or area of the country or even world, but it's to create that moment and make something special. Becki, I know we are coming up against it. This has been an awesome conversation. I could talk to you for hours on end, but I'm sure you're very busy. I want to ask you two quick things. How would you recommend someone find their purpose or find their worth it? And then the second part is, I know that the Grit Intention book is out right now, and that I believe you said that the next installment is coming out soon. Where can folks find that to go read from your perspective, as well as everyone else who collaborated on it?
Yeah. All right. So, how do I recommend someone evaluate their purpose and their worth it? I really think that it goes back to a quote that I mentioned earlier, and asking yourself what makes you come alive. Really thinking about the activities that you can get lost in. And some people call that flow. And that's really where your light shines the brightest. And remembering it may not be one thing, it may be many. There may be many things that light you up. Because there's many sources of purpose and meaning in our lives if we look for it. And so I would encourage you to commit to doing more of that. Do more of that within your role if you can. That's the job crafting that I mentioned earlier. Or do it outside of work if you can't. Sometimes your role cannot be everything you want it to be. I know I was having a conversation with my mom this summer. Growing up, she had to have jobs that didn't necessarily fill her soul, because she had to have benefits for us kids. But she would do things outside of work, volunteering, living a life of service. And that's what made her feel whole, because occupation may not be everything to everyone. So we need to fill our cup with outside activities when we can't make it happen in our roles. And so maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's crafting. Again, it's different for everyone. But if you don't spend time thinking about what makes you feel whole and intentionally making choices and working towards that, you're always going to feel a gap. You're always going to feel that something is missing. And what I think is really amazing is when leaders tap into this need and this purpose that team members have, and help them find ways to live out their purpose at work. Again, that's where that magic happens. When you can make it happen inside of work, that's awesome. It's a win for both the individual and the organization. And then you also ask, where can people get the Grit Anthology? So you can just go on Amazon. Tenacity doesn't come out until November 1st. I'm pretty sure that's the launch date for the Kindle version. On November 1st, but you can get the hardback books, or paperback, I should say, or you can read any of them on Audible too. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Becki. I really appreciate your time. This has been a great conversation. I want to do it again, where we are far removed from COVID. Nobody's talking about it anymore, and we can evaluate our purpose, our worth it. And I want to follow your journey as well, as you continue to create your roles and do that. I think it's absolutely wonderful, and you are a wealth of knowledge. It's a pleasure talking with you every time. But I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and have a wonderful weekend, and enjoy pickup. It's my favorite part of the day, is when I get to go pick up my daughter and she runs out, and I get to give her a big hug, and then I ask her how her day was, and she just points out puppies as we walk along the street. But she's only 2, so we're working on it. We're getting there.
Yeah, I wouldn't say my boys run to me with open arms to jump in my hands because they would knock me down. But I do get to be that annoying mom of teens, and I think they secretly love it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.
See ya.
That was Becki Feldmann. We were talking all about uncovering what your worth it is, finding your purpose, how it applied to the employee experience, and also a little bit of work from home conversation, a little bit of COVID conversation, how people's roles have changed, finding your worth it, finding your purpose, how you as a leader can open those doors with individuals and have those conversations. So if you missed any of the episode, you can always restart it here on LinkedIn or on YouTube, or you can catch the podcast version, which will be out this afternoon on Spotify and Apple Music. But I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day and weekend, and we'll see you soon. Thanks so much.